I felt lost. I felt alone. I felt that nobody experienced anything I experienced. I felt like I was on my own little island, separate from everybody else. And it's like I could see everybody, but I couldn't be like them. I was never quite like everybody else. There was this isolation around it, a lot of isolation. It was actually when I was in a psych ward that I realized that other people were dealing with the same issues, because I had people there that were dealing with the same thing, and they were from all walks of life, all age groups, everything. And it was like, it just suddenly dawned on me. I was like, I'm not alone anymore. Like, I don't think I was ever alone. I just didn't know it.
Welcome to the Unfiltered Minds Podcast, the only culturally diverse podcast where we discuss ways to destigmatize mental health, as well as promote self-seeking behaviors amongst our youth and family members struggling with ADHD or depression. Now, here's your host, Jane Levy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered Mind Podcast. This is a platform where we discuss ways to destigmatize mental health, as well as promote self-help seeking behaviors amongst our youth and their family members. We are super excited to welcome today's guest, Tim. Welcome, Tim. Tim is an artist and a business owner. Tim also managed bipolar disorder type 2, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, ADHD. And Tim is a recovered alcoholic. You've been sober, Tim, for 8 years, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Congratulations. You're married.
Thank you.
And you have 5 children. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to add anything else before we kick this off?
No, I think you hit all the bases.
When you reached out, Tim, I was super excited to read a little bit of your stories. You have a little bit of everything going on there. While many people remain on silence about sobriety, you are very vocal about yours, and you're very intentional about sharing your story. Why is that so important to you?
Well, when I first got sober, I realized that for me personally, if I wasn't very open about it publicly, since I had a lot of followers on Instagram and stuff like that, I thought if I wasn't open about it publicly, then it created like a hiding space for me, a secret. And I felt that in a secret, in a hiding space, I had kind of room to maneuver and I could get in trouble there. So I figured if I was open, I had accountability from other people.
That's very smart, because if you were hiding about it, the tendency for you to actually regress back to that behavior, right, would be very high. But again, when you're open about it, people are actually looking up to you right now, right? To see.
Yeah, and I was afraid, because of that openness about it, I was afraid that if I relapsed I would be letting a lot of people down to begin with, but it would be letting down even more people. So it really did add that layer to the accountability part.
Nice. How was the process like initiating help?
Well, being bipolar, which I had not been diagnosed at the time I got sober. Being bipolar, I was in a major depressive. I was actually in a mixed episode where you're hypomanic and you're depressed at the same time. And I had been out drinking all night, and I had hit this point where I just wanted to die, and I wanted to kill myself, and that was my plan. But I stopped short because my phone was dead and I couldn't email my fiancée at the time to let her know what I was doing. And I thought that was unfair. So I made it back to my car, made it home. And when I got home, I just realized I have serious problems here and I need to get some help. And she helped get me into a crisis unit and then into a psych ward for a little while. And, thank God I have her. But, I had to hit a rock bottom with all aspects, with my addiction and with my mental health, because I was in crisis in mental health at the time.
In your journey during those crises, you came to realize that the issues that you dealt with through alcohol are the same issues that everybody is dealing with. What are some of those issues that you were dealing with?
I felt lost. I felt alone. I felt that nobody experienced anything I experienced. I felt like I was on my own little island, separate from everybody else. And it's like I could see everybody, but I couldn't be like them. I was never quite like everybody else. There was this isolation around it, a lot of isolation. It was actually when I was in a psych ward that I realized that other people were dealing with the same issues, because I had people there that were dealing with the same thing, and they were from all walks of life, all age groups, everything. And it was like, it just suddenly dawned on me. I was like, I'm not alone anymore. Like, I don't think I was ever alone. I just didn't know it.
And the more you push the problems off, the more they were becoming worse, right? But once you find out that you were not alone, you felt like you have like a sense of support. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty correct. I think that once like I said, once I realized there were other people like me, it did make me feel less alone. And it also made me understand that because there's other people like me, there's people that want to help people like me. And it was once I realized there was help, I wasn't afraid to reach out for it anymore. I knew I had problems. I knew I had issues since I was very young. I just never thought they were as severe as they really were.
So the goal is really for depression. You struggle with depression. It's not to treat the depression. It's to manage it. How are you currently managing your depression?
Well, right now I'm on several medications for mood stabilizing,
Mhm.
and it's that there's a lot of mindfulness practice I do. I journal, keep a gratitude and affirmation journal. It's all these little things that before I did them, I was like, oh, that's corny. I'm not doing that stuff. And then once I started doing it, I was like, oh man, this is really works. This really does help my mental state from day to day. So it's a combination of medicines. It's a combination of honesty with my loved ones, telling them how I'm feeling. I have a good support network, especially with my wife. So I talk to her a lot about what's going on. I haven't been in therapy recently, but I was in therapy pretty steady for about 8 years. And, I still see my psychiatrist every few months, check in, make sure my medication is correct and everything. But yeah, it's just a day to day process of evaluating myself, taking reflection time.
Let's talk about mental health and parenting. A child's mental health is supported by their parents, right? And
Yes,
a
absolutely.
child's health development depends on their parents. But when you have a parent who is struggling mentally, how did that play out around your kids?
Like I said, I have 5 kids, ranging from 17 down to 4, and I'm always age appropriate, open with them.
Hmm.
So my 17-year-olds, they basically know everything at this point. They're old enough to understand it. They're very smart kids. But even my 6-year-old, like I said, age appropriate, open with him. And I think the fact that I tell them, what it is that I go through, it encourages them to be able to talk about things. Again, it's that honesty with people. And they know because I deal with issues that they have support if they're having problems. And I check in with them a lot, just make sure they're feeling okay, make sure that nothing's going on, and that I'm always here for them.
Give them that assurance that you're always there for them.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
all the time I let them know.
Let's talk about relationship and coping with being in a relationship with somebody who is struggling mentally. How was that like for your partner?
It's been very difficult for her. She's very patient, she's very understanding, but it's still hard for her because when I was drinking, it's kind of like there's a clear cut, okay, you're sober now, so you're not going to do the things you were doing drinking because you're working on sobriety. There's a big change. But with mental health, it's harder to see. And even since I've been sober, I did have a major, it's called a dysphoric uh, bipolar episode. And it's where you're experiencing mania and depression at the same time.
Hmm.
And it's really the worst combination, worst type of episode to have. And I had this long term episode that lasted for almost 2 years, and it was really devastating to her and, my family as a whole. So it has been difficult, but I hadn't been through that sober before. And I kind of feel that I had to go through it to really understand. Again, but when I was drinking, I hadn't been diagnosed bipolar yet. It took a while after I was sober before I actually got diagnosed. I've been diagnosed with depression before that. I was being treated with the wrong medicines. But after the diagnosis, I feel like I had to go through that episode in order to understand it better. Because I could really understand my illness and what it was capable of. And, while it has been difficult on my family, again, my wife has been a saint. She's been understanding about the whole thing.
You mentioned that you've been treated with the wrong medication. Walk us through that process. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Well, I had been diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 34. So it was 10 years ago. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. Clinical depression is treated with antidepressants. It was when I was re-diagnosed as bipolar. Bipolar disorder is treated with mood stabilizers. So a mood stabilizer makes it so you don't go too high, don't go too low, kind of keep you in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Antidepressants raise your mood. When you take antidepressants in your bipolar, it puts you at risk of mania. So it could actually trigger episodes with you. So I was being treated with that. I was actually hypomanic, which is not full mania, but it's, you're excited, you're ready to go, you're productive, you're doing things, but you're a little irritable. Like it's, I was like that for several years and just thought that was normal because it was also coincided with me getting sober. So I didn't know that I wasn't in my normal state either. It's difficult with bipolar because you don't always understand what normal is because you're usually in one or the other.
So, what are your triggers?
It can be random, actually.
Okay.
It's hard to say. A lot of my triggers involve triggers with alcohol because it gets my mind going in a certain direction that I have to shut down real quick. Or else, it can send me off in another direction mentally aside from the addiction. Sometimes just with the ebb and flow of normal moods, I can start getting caught in one of the upswings or the downswings. So if I'm having a rough day and, I might be feeling a little bit down, just like anybody does, but I could get caught in that down and just keep going down and get depressed. Or if I'm having a great day, I have to be a little careful because I can get caught and go the other direction. So sometimes it is a little random and it is varied, but a lot of times my sobriety, if I run into a situation that's triggering for the alcohol, it can trigger anxiety, and then the anxiety often triggers some of my bipolar symptoms. It's a big web of all these different things that are happening.
But you look fabulous, and it seems like you have them all under control.
Right now, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to say I'll never have an episode. I'd like to never have an episode again. I'm not going to say I'll never relapse and never drink again, but I know today I'm not drinking, and I know today my mental state is good. And then tomorrow I'll get up and do the same things to try to assure that again.
It's a blessing. How is entrepreneurship and mental health? How did that play out when you were struggling?
So I've almost sunk my business at least twice, possibly a third time.
Hold on, Tim. I didn't mean to cut you. Tell them what you do for a living.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm a tattoo artist and I own 2 shops. And then I kind of dabble in a lot of other things like art sales and, I do some vintage resale. So I do a lot of things, but my main business is I own 2 tattoo shops. I have 12 people working for me. I almost sunk that business multiple times. One was when I was drinking and I was in an episode that I didn't know or understand at the time, but I was also drinking very heavily. And I had probably 5 or 6 people quit over the course of like 3 or 4 months. And at the time I blamed them. I didn't understand. But in hindsight, I understand why they left. And it was because of my behavior and other people not only being unable to cope with it, but they didn't have to. It wasn't their responsibility to stick by me. It's nobody's responsibility to stick by me if I'm having a hard time. And the second time was directly mental health related, no drinking. When I had this long episode a couple of years ago, my behavior, again, drove away 5 or 6 people, left us shorthanded for a long time. But again, now, because I am taking care of my health properly and I'm taking the right medications and I'm checking in with myself, I'm checking in with my wife and my support system. Right now, everything's really good with work. And the people I work with, I'm open with them. They understand, what my issues are. And some of them feel comfortable enough to call me out if I'm acting a little off. So that's good too. Some of them hold me accountable for it.
I'm sure that's a great work environment. I was looking at your TikTok. You had problem with confrontational, right? Telling them what to do. How are you coping with that?
I'm trying to get better with it. We always try to get better with the things we have shortcomings with.
Yeah.
I do have a problem with confrontation, and I think obviously everything stems from childhood trauma, but I have this problem with confrontation because I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to make people angry, and I don't want to fight. And for me, I fear there's going to be like violence or something. I had a guy who wanted to fight me after I had to fire him for something. So there's like damage there. But I have this fear of confrontation because of all these different things in my past and, this people-pleasing attitude I have. But what I do now with trying to work on that is I just try to understand that If I approach people in a civil manner and I'm just open about what's happening, even if it's uncomfortable for me, because it's still very uncomfortable. But as long as I approach like that, chances are nothing bad is going to happen. That's one. I know it's just anxiety over, oh my God, what could happen? But most of the time it's needless worry. But as long as I'm open with people and, just work to overcome that bit of fear, usually things work out just fine. Most people don't want confrontation either. Most people want to resolve problems without conflict. So, as long as I can remind myself of that, it really helps out a lot.
And like you said, we all are the same, but we're all uniquely different. And you mentioned that, and that's really not only you are struggling with that problem. I know a lot of people who are also own businesses that are also struggling with that, giving orders, directives, right? They don't feel comfortable with doing it. But those are some of the things that actually you were shy away from and that I was actually leading you to where you are in the substance abuse. But now it seems like you have them under control.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. I mean, it's always a work in progress, of course. There's always more work to do.
Yeah.
But I have a better grasp than I used to, and I just try to have a better grasp every day. So I just
Yes.
try to get a little bit better every day. 1% keeps adding up. So I try to do a little better. I run things better. I'm more understanding of their needs as employees. So I know that's a big one. I was trying to install all these like rigid rules of this is how things need to be done. And I didn't understand that, it's not necessarily how things have to be done. It's as long as the things get done. So,
Yes. What habits do you actually right now have implemented currently in place to take care of your overall mental health?
well, like I said, one of them is gratitude and affirmation journaling every day. So every morning I write down 3 things I'm thankful for. And then I write down 3 positive things about myself. I always share one to Facebook and elaborate on it a little bit more than I do in the journal. I also do some journaling aside from that in a whole separate journal. Again, it's just mindset and mindfulness. I try to be aware of my surroundings, try to stay in the present moment. If I'm doing the dishes, I'm just doing the dishes. I'm not thinking about a bunch of crazy stuff. I'm just making sure I'm getting the gunk off. That's basically how I try to approach the day. Whatever I'm doing, that's my action for the time. Don't think about anything else. Just think about what I'm doing. And a lot of times that eliminates a lot of the worry and a lot of the frustration of, just day to day life.
I appreciate that answer. Being grateful, that's the key right there, right?
It really is. It
It
really is.
is.
Gratitude is so important. I think a lot of people underestimate it.
So what can friends do or loved ones do to support someone who is actually going through sobriety?
The best thing anyone can do is just be there. Just tell people I'm here for you. If you're in a situation like for me with drinking's hard to avoid. It's everywhere. So if I'm out somewhere and some people are drinking, sometimes my wife will check in and say, "You okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine," or like, "No, I need to go." And that's basically the best thing somebody can do for somebody in sobriety is just to say, "I'm here for you." And just to check in if you're in a situation, just check in, be like, "Are you doing okay? Do you need to get out of here? Do you need any help?" Because unless you too are also in recovery, you can't fully understand what people go through. So, a lot of times people that are in recovery, they don't want to hear advice from people that aren't. But the support of just being there is incredibly important.
Any words of encouragement for anyone who actually want to be where you are right now?
You can do it. There's a way to manage your mental health. There are ways to be sober. It's not a one-stop shop either. You're not going to just say this is what we do and this is how it happens. Like there's a million ways to stay sober. There's a million ways to take care of your mental health. And a lot of times you got to, figure those things out for yourself. You have to learn a lot of different tactics because really what taking care of your mental health and staying sober is about is learning coping strategies, learning healthy coping strategies for day-to-day life. And, that's it. You can do it. There is life beyond substances. There is life beyond being stuck in your illness.
That's amazing, team. What's your experience with therapy?
Okay, so I had one therapist for a couple of years that was not very good. And I didn't know he wasn't very good because I had never had a therapist.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't helping, and I eventually stopped going. My wife had told me, she's like, and I'd talk about it a little bit, and she'd be like, he doesn't sound very good to me. He doesn't sound like he's helping. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's a therapist. So I had one for a couple of years I didn't click with. I found another one, and I went to him for 8 years, and we clicked very well. And he was incredibly helpful walking me through a lot of my issues and helping me understand myself better. And that's the important thing about therapy, is finding somebody that you get along with and that you feel comfortable talking to, and that it seems comfortable with them talking back. That was one of my issues with my first therapist, is he didn't really respond too much to what I was saying. Sometimes it made me feel crazy, like, man, the therapist isn't talking. But as long as you can find a therapist you can click with, it's really helpful. If you find a therapist, if you get one and you do not feel that connection with them, it's okay to stop going. You want to give it a few sessions just to see, because it takes a little while to warm up to a stranger with your issues. But you want to give it a few sessions, see how it goes, and if you don't connect with them, it's okay to stop seeing them and find someone else. Some people think you go once and it fails, that therapy doesn't work, but that's not the case. You just have to find the right person.
Find the right one that you connect with. And the reason why the topic around therapy is so important, because that can really turn a lot of people off. Because once they go to one therapist, they don't click. They go to another therapist, they don't connect. They stop going altogether, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And that's what I had done after my first therapist.
yeah.
I'd stopped going altogether, and it took a lot of coercion from my wife to get me to go back.
Somebody's watching this, team, and they want to find you. It can be to reconnect with you, for getting tattoo, or just talking about mental health in general. How can they find you on social media?
Well, if somebody wanted to talk about tattooing, they can go to my website. That's timpangburn.com. If anybody wants to talk about mental health or sobriety, Instagram or Threads, I'm at Tim Pangburn Speaks, and I'm open to anybody reaching out if they have questions. If you're currently struggling with substances, or if you're currently struggling with your mental health and you haven't gotten help, I'm happy to talk.
But Tim, this has been amazing, and I just want to thank you for your time. And I hope that what you've shared here today will resonate with our guests and our viewers, and just give somebody hope as well.
Yeah, that's all I really want is for somebody to feel that the things I say help them in some way.
Yeah. Any last words for me before we close?
Just thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my story.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Unfiltered Minds Podcast. If you love what you're learning on our podcast, we ask that you please join the Unfiltered Minds community by subscribing and sharing our podcast on YouTube. Or you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Our dedicated team of ADHD coaches are committed to making a positive impact on the lives of our listeners. Through our thought-provoking podcast, we offer valuable resources, PBT training for ADHD, and a supportive community that understands the journey of mental health challenges. Also, you can visit our website at theunfilteredminds.com, where you can sign up to be a guest on our podcast, as well as sign up for our 8-week parent behavior training course on ADHD.